So Joel and I did a class at Nick's. Well, I think arranged local to you. Nick organized it, and he's one of these forever learner guys that actually is a forever learner. One of the things we did in the class was the designated target drill, which is a transition heavy drill. If you don't know it, just, it has you going back and forth a lot. There's a lot of transitions in one drill. You're very busy visually. It's very challenging. Started shooting that with your rifle, and then I think you kind of started to understand why we use red dots instead of LPVOs. Is that about the size of it?
In a hurry, yes. Very, very
All right.
quick.
So tell us your story, Nick.
Okay, so doing it with a pistol, right? I was like, me being me, I'm like, let's try this with a rifle and see if it's like the same exact thing. I had a 1-6 K69, Collis one K69 on there. It's good. It's great glass. I think out of all of them, that's probably the easiest LPVO I've ever tried. But like, as soon as I started shooting designated target drill, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm legit hanging out on this target forever. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, let me try this with a dot. Try it with a dot, no more hang out. Like, as soon as the rifle arrives, like, I'm able to shoot. And I think it's because, yes, like that 1-6 has a 1X, but there's still eye relief. And so if you're coming from a target transitioning, like, you're waiting for that blackness to like disappear so you can then target focus and actually aim the gun. So
are you
go ahead.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Are you talking about target focusing with the 1-to-1, like 1.1 power?
No, it's a 1X on the K69.
Okay. But target focusing, like what you experience, so target focusing with parallax, a lot of things have to be perfect, right? Like perfect cheek weld, perfect optic to eye distance, right? The mount has to be perfect. Not to mention the objective lens, even though it might be bigger than like an aim point or some optics, the tube is much longer, so your vision is obfuscated with your non-dominant eye trying to go to targets that are to your strong side.
Right. So
go ahead.
Yeah, and so like your right eye, my right eye, like looking through the scope, you cannot be target focused until that thing like 100% arrives on the target.
Yes.
You have to clean up sight picture. So that's what was taking so much time. And like looking back, like I used to shoot with a 1-10 and an acro on the side, and I would catch myself using the acro all the time, the red dot. And like looking back, I think it's because like transitions and shit are way easier with a red dot than they are LPVO because there's no eye relief. Like you can tell me that 1X until the cows come home. It is not the same as being a red dot.
It's not because there's parallax.
Right.
It's not the same. These are all things, right? Like from, I would say that like assault rifle, adaptive rifle type distances, if 0 to 300, right? The people use LPVOs because they feel like it's going to make things easier when it makes a small amount of things easier out to distance in terms of how your foundational skills, how your fundamentals need to be. But outside of those one or two things, it makes almost everything more difficult.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I think too, it's once you guys, so I know you shoot almost exclusively red dots on pistols, right?
Yes.
So you're doing a lot of, I know after training with Ben and all the information, like you're doing a lot of now visual stuff, looking at what you're looking at and tightening up that vision game. And you see that once you do that, what you can get away with the rifle, and you're able to do with a rifle, like I'll argue this with anybody. Anyone that shoots an unmagnified red dot, a holographic optic, outside of 75 meters stares at the fucking dot. Outside of your zero distance, and there is no one I've ever met that zeroes that gun being target focused. They all stare at the dot.
Yeah.
Like that's a fact. Whether you want to admit it or not, that is how people do it. And then it's why you zero like that. Guys are programmed to shoot like that at distance. So when now you ask them to shoot target focus, right? You learn how to shoot target focus. 100-meter head plates become much, much easier unmagnified, and you start to see, like, if you can pull that kind of aggressive shooting with getting the results you want in terms of accuracy, the LPVO, an LPVO that goes down to 1 power almost doesn't do enough for you to justify having it, in my opinion.
No.
Hey, Matt, there's one thing I think the guys in the comments would find very interesting, and that's your rifle setup, like your work or like a duty setup, where you have the dot on top or the holographic sight on top, no LPVO. A lot of guys say, hey, LPVO on top, dot on the side. Why not do that?
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that?
So dot on the side, one, for me, anything hanging off the gun at 45 degrees when you're doing a lot with the gun, you're going up and over walls, you're climbing, you're in and out of vehicles, whatever, planes, helicopters, walking, you're carrying other things when you're walking. From a truly operational side, anything hanging off the gun sucks, right? It snags on everything. Now, if in terms of true operational shooters, like if you talk about military, almost no reason to have that fucking unmagnified dot on the side, because the vast majority of the time, I would say 80% of the time, what you're going to have in terms of engagement is going to be actively or passively under night vision. So that thing doesn't do you any good, right? Neither does the magnification, you know. Now, doing daytime stuff, conventional forces, yeah, it makes more sense, but I don't see a lot of those guys having that. From a duty standpoint, I think law enforcement, I'm not buying the PID I want a PID. Dude, there's nothing that 1 to 6 is going to give you that clicking on a magnifier on the back in terms of PID isn't going to give you, right? It's just not. Most of those guys that have LPVOs turn the magnification. There's only 2 magnification settings. There's
6.
One power or max power, you know, 6, 8, or 10, whichever one you have. And you don't always need that, right? So in terms of weight, in terms of everything, like the most engagements from the law enforcement side are going to be much, much closer, where some mildly developed fundamentals and unmagnified red dot is going to do everything for you that you need it to do. What it's also going to give you in terms of awareness is not try to focus you to stare inside that too, right? So my setup I like is in a holographic sight. I use EOTech for work, not because like I chose that thing, it's just that's what is available. And then I use I have a Wilcox mount behind it where the G33 or what's the bigger one? 35, 34 magnifier. I have the 3 power clips on and off, right? So 90% of the time that thing is off and it's stowed in a pouch. If I want to look at something under magnification, I put it on, I look at what I want to look at, and I take it off. Or like I will use binos or something with true magnification to look at things, right? But the way my eyes are relatively good, so anything that I can see, you know, I can 200, 300 yards, I can make out people and see what they're holding. Yes, you wouldn't see, is it a pistol or is it this in my hand, you know, to that level of PID, then I would use the magnifier. But to me, that setup makes way more sense than all of this other shit strapped onto your rifle. And I'm convinced everybody, like, social media is why people are throwing all that shit on their guns. Like, if you have a 1 to 6 power, why do you put another 1 power on it? Why do you have a setup? You have setups like that, Nick, don't you?
Not anymore. I've actually like taken all of that crap apart since then. So like I can tell you like what I don't like about it, especially like the offset dot on my one on the side of my 1 to 10. Here's the thing. Okay, it's a dot. dot, right? I transitioned to the dot, but like shoot more than one target with it and tell me how you like it, because transitions are extremely difficult if you're trying to target focus and there's a big ass scope in the way of your left eye.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm in the dot and there's a scope in the way of being able to see and move around and stuff, like it's, dude, to me, like the juice is not worth the squeeze at all. I think if you're just shooting one target, I'm not sure if you'll see that, but like put several targets up. Like the designated target drill is a really good one to give it a try with. And then try it with the dot, and then try it with your LPVO too. And I think what people are going to see with the LPVO, especially target focus, is like a bunch of eyeshadow coming into a target, and then because they're having to search around for that dot to be aware of it, they're 100% staring at it.
And this is something too, like precision rifle shooters will know if you're shooting an unknown distance range, right? So let's say you have targets at 200, 400, 600, 300, right? They're all visible when your head's up. But if you try to track those targets through, like, let's say 10 power or 12 power, like, they're very difficult to find. What you end up having to do is shoot, head comes out of the gun, look at the target, orient the gun, and then come back down behind it, right? You've experienced that with shooting magnification at like intermediate distances too, right?
Yep, for sure.
And that's one of the limitations of the LPVO when you talk about kind of that closer, I say like adaptive rifle stuff or operational rifle. I'm looking at 150 meters and in, right? And I'm really focusing on, 90 to close distances, being really aggressive, able to shoot really aggressive and really nasty fast with the rifle. The dot is what's going to give that to you, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Well,
so,
and like the time when you need some sort of reticle, like for me personally, my 14.5 with a 15-yard zero out to 400 yards. At 400 yards, I'm holding 1.5 mil high with 55 grain ball. Okay, I don't need a scope reticle to hold that high. I just don't. Just hold the top of the target and it's gonna hit, right? Beyond that, then yeah, sure, I probably need some sort of reticle to make it a little bit easier.
dude, yeah, and I think too for me, from a training standpoint, being able to shoot, out 200, 300, 400 meters, we would use a lot of LaRue steels, the falling self-resetting steel, and once you see, especially with the dot and 65-minute ring, right? EOTech, Romeo 4T, Hollow Suns, a lot of optics have it. Once you start to see, okay, it's hard at 400 meters to pick, hey, I have to be whatever. It's gonna drop, 32 inches. I need to be 18 inches above the head. But when you have the reference of the 65-minute ring in the dot and using the fallen steel, and you see, okay, that's what this sight picture looks like, it's very easy to recreate those over and over, right? You can do the math at 400, what 32 MOA actually is in terms of distance, and then you start to use that 65-minute hash mark, or the 6 o'clock hash on the 65-minute ring. There's a lot of aiming strategies that optic offers.
For sure. I think a lot of people do. I think everyone always talks about how they want more power. Like every year at SHOT Show, like, hey, we got a 1 in 10 or we got a 1 in 12, like more and more and more power. And I think that people typically miss out on the fact that, like, dude, sometimes more power is not very good. Like when I shot PRS, it was very rare that I went above 10, 12x, like even out to 1,000 yards, right? Because you want to be able to see impacts. Like the more zoomed in you are, the less you can see around the target.
Yeah. And I think for precision rifle shooters, right, shooting 260, 6.5 Creedmoor, yes, more power does a lot more advantage, or gives you a lot more advantage in some instances, right? Shooting, 800-900 meters, things like that. Shooting very small, like linear targets, like I've heard that's a big PRS thing, right? Like rulers and stuff like that. But with with a 5.56 gun, if you're like, hey, I want more power, the next thing out of your mouth would be like, and then also, what are you doing to advance bullet technology for 5.56 bullets? Like,
Yeah.
just it's yeah. I think it's too much. It's funny. So, how long did it take you? Like, what was the big moment where you're like, hey, man, this might not be the thing? Was it in Ben's class?
No, it was after his class because like
We didn't shoot rifle in the class, Matt.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm a shooting nerd, man. So like whatever you tell me with pistol, I'm gonna go try it with rifle because I want to see. And I just remember thinking like, dude, what is going on? Like this is very, very difficult. I see a ton of scope shadow. Like coming off of a transition, I see scope shadow, and then I'm 100% looking at the dot. Like it's not accurate, and it's because of all of the eye relief. Like I don't care if it's 1x, it still has eye relief. It's not a red dot. Like you cannot use a 1x on a scope as a red dot. It's not the same.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not the same, but it is. Guys, see, I've heard plenty of guys I've worked with. They're like, I can be just as fast. No, you can't.
No.
You can't. You can learn to be fast. Yes, you can, but you cannot be as fast as you. The potential, like your ceiling is much lower for that type of shooting than somebody that has unmagnified holographic.
I agree.
Ben, you got some people concerned you're gonna overdose on Mountain Dew.
Just one, I think. Yeah. DeForest says he's as fast with the LPVO as any pro shooter running a dot. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. He should probably go win some matches if that's the case, because he would do that, sounds like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that say that it's, they come from, I know Kyle comes from like a recce background in that. And if you're as fast as it with it, it's like, hey, you just got to test it and just test it at those intermediate distances. Because I don't think that's the case. I think that parallax does a lot of different things that people don't understand. And I know Kyle shoots a lot, but not the way that I think we're shooting.
No, he shoots B8s. He's on the B8 train.